Welcome to Grade 1 View, the podcast for future CRNAs by future CRNAs, a partnership between AANA and Beyond the Mask.
Whether you're about to graduate from a nurse anesthesia program, trying to get accepted to nursing school, or you're somewhere in between,
this podcast is a resource and safe space for all things nurse anesthesia.
We're your Season 2 host team. I'm Levi Davis.
I'm Kelsey Muir.
I'm Mackenzie Lane.
And I'm Nicolas Alexander. So grab your Mac or your Miller, turn up your flows, and get ready, because this is Grade 1 View. Welcome back to Grade 1 View. I'm Nicolas.
And I'm Kelsey. And thanks for joining us today, everyone. And we have a very special guest who needs very little introduction.
She has had one of the most recognizable voices in the nurse anesthesia community, was a former president of the AANA, a co-host of Beyond the Mask, which happens to be the #1 podcast in nurse anesthesia with over 1 million downloads, and an Agatha Hodgins Award recipient who has spent decades advocating for our profession while inspiring countless SRNAs and CRNAs along the way.
So today we want to go beyond the titles. We want to learn more about the person behind the microphone, how she got here, what helped shape her career, and talk about some of the lessons she's learned along the way. So Sharon Pearce, welcome to Grade 1 View.
Thank you so very much. I am so honored to be on here. I was telling Nicolas this morning, I listened to you guys as I was going on my morning walk, and I'm so proud of you guys. You're doing a fantastic job.
Awesome.
Well, thank
you. Oh, we're so excited to have you here.
Yeah, we were actually talking because obviously the last time we probably sat down to chat with you was when we were interviewing for this podcast. So
That's
Yeah.
right.
full circle
Mhm.
moment.
Exactly. So, Sharon, for those who know you as the voice of Beyond the Mask and the former AANA president, let's kind of go back to the beginning here. What first drew you to nursing, and was becoming a CRNA always part of that plan?
Interesting story there, Nicolas. I knew I wanted to be a nurse in the 2nd grade.
Oh, wow.
I know that was a long, long time ago in a galaxy far away. But I had to have multiple surgeries because I had congenital deformities of my feet. And I usually don't tell people that because then they'll focus on it, right? But there you go. The real story from Sharon Pearce right here on Grade 1 View. So whenever I was in the 2nd grade, when I had my first surgery, my dad had stayed over in the hospital room, and he was asleep in a crib because I was in a ward. Y'all don't even know what that is anymore, but everybody was kind of in a room together back then. And I needed a pain shot, and I didn't have an IV, so they would have to give me an IM injection. And the nurse that came in, whenever I'd pushed the call bell, she was so sweet. She's probably dead by now. That's been a lot of years ago. But she just went shh and pointed to my daddy, and he had crawled up in the baby crib to sleep. Of course, he blamed his back problems on me for many, many years. She was so sweet, and I was going to have an IM injection, and I was terrified. What am I, 7, 8 years old? And she was so nice to me, and I told her then, I'm going to be a nurse like you one day. So fast forward, I'm in nursing school, and I rotated through the OR, and it was a CRNA only hospital, and the CRNA had a difficult airway, and I can remember everybody running, a lot of chaos, and her voice getting very loud, and she couldn't get an airway. And I said, you know what? I think that's what I want to do. Now, she does know how she influenced me. So when I graduated from nursing school, I had an ADN. I could push morphine, but I couldn't buy alcohol. But at 19 years old, whenever I was getting ready to get out of nursing school, I knew that I wanted to be a CRNA. Fast forward again. I got married when I was 20 years old. Wouldn't advise it. It has worked out well. I've been married 43 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Now, ask me how long I've known him.
How long?
43 years and 3 months. So
Oh, that was
Oh, so that's the secret. Meet him, marry him, and you don't have time to
that's right.
to
You
know
don't
each
have
other.
time to
Twice,
take
right?
them to the side, right? So my husband worked for a very well-known in the South beach band. And he calls me one night and he said, Sharon, you're not going to believe this. I'm playing at the nurse anesthetist meeting for North Carolina. I've been talking to a man all night long, and his wife is the director of an anesthesia program. And she said to call her. And because we didn't have cell phones or anything, her name was Sandra Marie Ouellette, but it wasn't Ouellette at the time. Her husband was Chow Marie, her first husband. And so I was 19 years old, and I went and talked to Sandy at the school at Wake Forest, and it was a handwritten application you put in then. So when I did apply to school, it was the same application I had gotten from her when I was 19 years old when I went to visit her.
Wow. Honestly, you know how they always say the stars align? I don't think there could have been a better tale of like stars aligning than that.
I love that.
Well, I'm kind of curious now to see if the stars aligned in another way for you. I guess, was there more of a defining moment when you realized you wanted to lead the profession instead of just practicing in it?
Another interesting fact, Wake Forest, where I went to school, has had more national presidents from that school than any other school in the country. Almost 10% of national presidents have come from that school. And with Sandy, you didn't have a choice. From the first day that she gets you in class, she talks about professionalism, and this is going to be a great profession for you. And to whom much is given, much is required later on. And you will give back to this profession in one way or another. So it's ingrained in us from the very beginning. So I graduated in 1992. You guys probably weren't even born then. Nicholas, you're
1992, right
oh,
here.
well, I will always remember the year you were born going forward. Didn't take long. I was involved with the state association, and I was president 2001 to 2002. So it took me about 9 years to crawl up the chain, but I had served on the board for quite some time, served on committees because Sandy expects it. And then after I was in leadership at the state level, we were in some big battles in North Carolina legislatively, and I had fired our lobbyists whenever I was president of the state. So we didn't have a lobbyist of record to begin with, so I registered, and I just started going to Raleigh and figuring out what needed to be done, and eventually hired a lobbyist. She worked for the Nurses Association. She was excellent. Her name was Joanne Stevens, and her brother had been Speaker Pro Tem of the Senate. And she was quite something. And she worked for the Nurses Association. And we went out to get a glass of wine one evening. And I said, if you will quit working for the nurses, I'll hire you. So, between her and the Senate minority leader, and between the two of them, they took me under their wings and taught me everything I know legislatively. I remained a lobbyist off and on for us, as well as a company that I worked for. And we were in a big battle in '05 to '08, where they wanted to put physician supervision into legislation in North Carolina of nurse anesthetists. And so I had to stay at home and lobby. And then as soon as that was done and we whooped their butts, then I decided to run for the national board. And I went straight up the chain from that. It's interesting, Jeremy and I talk about it because I met Jeremy right before I was president of the state, and he just stuck with me all these years. And I said, I hear a lot about imposter syndrome, right? About the students. I never had that. Now, I got humbled. Y'all talked about that on y'all's podcast that I listened to this morning. You do get humbled. And I think I cussed out every CRNA who pushed me, Sharon, you need to quit waiting. You need to go now. I said, I just need to get my kids up a little bit. I need them to feed and toilet themselves before I go to anesthesia school. And they make it look so easy, right? And you think, I can do that. And then you find out it's harder than it looks. So you guys will make it look easy one day too.
I
So
hope so, because right now I'm not.
I know, but you will get there. You will get there. I absolutely promise you that you will get there. It's just not yet, but you'll make it look easy too before it's over with. It's pretty tough in the beginning, but I never had imposter syndrome. I always knew I was going to be there. I always knew I was going to be AANA president. I just needed somebody else to validate that. And I've got a good friend named Carol Deuscher from Minnesota, who now is my granddaughter's godmother. And I had just won the PR award for North Carolina. This was 1998. We were in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee at the meeting. And back then, they didn't have, things like we have now. So I had produced the video, The Best Kept Secret in Healthcare, and they had put TVs up in the exhibit hall. And the video just ran over and over. And I'm standing there looking at it. And Carol walks up to me. I did not know her. She goes, "Are you Sharon Pearce?" I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "You're going to be president of this association one day." And she's one of the Fab Four. If you ever listen to us, you'll hear the Fab Four on the podcast. Every time we're together, I bring my equipment and we'll tape something. So it's Jackie Rolls from Indiana. Everybody knows Jackie. Carol Deuscher from Minnesota, and then Tracy Castleman from New Jersey. And the four of us have been together since about 1998. Friends, our kids know each other. We travel together. So the association has given so much to me.
I swear I feel like you're reading our kind of behind the scene notes, because we were going to actually ask you about imposter syndrome and you just full on said you have never suffered from that. I'm also kind of envious, because maybe you could actually speak then to where does the confidence and self-assurance kind of come from? How do you even manufacture that in times when maybe you don't feel like maybe you're meant to be in a certain space, or, obviously with Nicolas was talking about with clinical, just feeling like it's been a little bit rough. So how do you power through and give yourself that, again, that self-assurance?
I always knew I was going to do this, and I always knew I was going to be here. And I don't know those answers. Now, I do have imposter syndrome sometime. I will share with you guys that I am going to be part-time nursing faculty with the SNAP program that Levi's in. And I am feeling a little anxious about that because I've never been an educator in that type of form. So I might be feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome, but nobody will know it except those who listen to this podcast. But it's just like giving anesthesia. After we started the program, 3 weeks, you were in the operating room. And I had done it before. They were leaving me alone a few weeks after I started giving anesthesia. But I feel your pain. I feel your pain.
I feel like it's kind of the fake it till you make it type situation. You're trying your hardest. You just want to be safe, obviously, in the OR with everything that you're doing. But it definitely still feels like, you're a fish out of water. So I'm awaiting for the time when that kind of dissipates. Now that, Sharon, you're going to be actually transitioning into a new role as part of like faculty, and obviously since our podcast is really for SRNAs, and I'm sure you have probably precepted a lot of SRNAs throughout your career. What do you think is going to be one habit that students can kind of start to build during school that will make them a better CRNA or, an outstanding CRNA?
Well, the reason why you were chosen to go into this field is most of us are kind of anal retentive, OCD type of individuals, and you are rewarded for that. And maintain that, because if you do the same thing every single time, Nicolas was talking on the podcast, I believe either you or Levi, about having everything in the same spot. That's what'll get you through this. But I will tell you what I tell my students that I precept right now at one of the hospitals I work at. This is the best time in your career. You get to see what every single CRNA does. I don't get to see what every CRNA does unless I go relieve them on break, but I pimp them all the time. I understand there's peppering on the West Coast now and pimping on the East Coast.
Let's not make that a thing.
But
Just stick to the pimping.
I will constantly pimp the CRNAs that I work with, because I am called the anesthesia grandma. Not to my face, because I'm the outside of one other gentleman, I have been giving anesthesia the longest at the hospital that I currently work at. So these young CRNAs, they're so sharp, and we had one way to ventilate. It was just tidal volume. Our biggest thing that we talked about was if you should sigh them or not. That was a big thing. And now there's all this special stuff on the ventilator, so I'm always pimping these younger CRNAs. You need to teach me about this, but you have the opportunity to learn from each and every single CRNA and pull the best from each of them and make it yours. I can still tell you the CRNA who taught me to put my drug labels on the syringe at the bottom, not down the side, because then you got to turn it over when you're looking for it. If you put it on the bottom, you can see it from the right whenever you look at it. Those are things that you'll remember forever. So you are in the best times of your career. You just don't know it right now.
And kind of going off that a little bit, what's one quality you look for in a student that has nothing to do with clinical knowledge?
Nothing to do. Well, see, I'm not in I don't choose them right now. This is all new for me. So these are skills that I'm going to have to develop. But whenever I'm working with students and they are willing to take on anything, and what I mean by that is, whenever I was in school, you better be salivating for every case that come down the pike. Okay. Your day finished, you were done by noon in the room that you are. Whenever I see a student eager to go to another room and take on another case and learn something else, be with somebody else, work with somebody else, I always remember that. But listen, it might have been a long time ago, but I do remember what it was like to be a student, and it can be so painful.
Well, that I was going to say, that's interesting, because we were going to actually ask you about your own training, and then what would be something that you wish someone had maybe told you before you became an SRNA?
Well, I was an OR nurse for a couple of years, so I worked with a lot of CRNAs at that time. I will tell you, I was extremely fortunate. I had so many excellent teachers, preceptors, and I'll tell you a story about one of them in particular. I had a horrific day. One like I heard about on the podcast, listen to y'all this morning, just a horrific day. We were not allowed to do regional where I trained at way back then. And so a resident would come in and put the spinal in, and then they'd leave. Well, did they care if it worked or not? No. And it was a hip. I will never forget it. And they're on this table and they're jacked way up, and the spinal wasn't working. Surgeon gets ready to cut. Patient screaming. It was just horrid. So I am trying to intubate this patient, and they're way up. I can't see. It's a difficult intubation. The anesthesiologist was a jerk, and that's being very nice about it. Later on, we find out he had a frontal brain tumor that had terrifically altered his personality. I mean, his baseline was jerk. So then he's got a brain tumor on top of that. We didn't know it at the time. And he is cursing me, screaming at me. It is so bad that the surgeon, whom I was friends with, broke scrub and come to the top of the table to get this man to back off. And he got me stools so I could get up to intubate the patient. That surgeon still remembers this case. I was mortified by the whole incident. The nurse anesthetist that was precepting me at the time, her name was Dwan Rube. It was a husband and wife duo. I learned so much from the both of them. And she wrote me a note and left it for me and said, Sharon, do not let this bother you. You're going to be a great CRNA. I still have that note. And when I found out that I had won my election as president-elect of the AANA, I sent a copy of it to her, and I told her, I said, I have never forgotten this day, and I have never forgotten what you told me, so much that I kept this note. So preceptors out there need to understand what an impact that you can have on somebody. And I firmly believe that is one of the reasons why I was so successful. She believed in me on one of the darkest days I had in the OR.
Yeah. I think sometimes all it takes is for that one person just to kind of give you the confidence, especially when you feel like you can't find that confidence just within yourself, even despite maybe, like we talked about, the self-assurance that you feel like you may have. Wow. That's a really cool story, though. I mean, obviously it sounds like from one of the darkest moments came probably the best moment of like resilience.
That's right.
And
whenever you have a bad day in the OR as a student, or it's perceived as being a bad day, like I said, I work with students at one of the hospitals that I work out at, and I always debrief at the end of the day. What do you think you did good? What do you think needs some work? I want to hear what you think. The student said, it was just terrible. And we had a patient you just can't quite get a handle on. Their blood pressure's up. You just, it's just a case you got to live through. And I know you guys have already experienced exactly what I'm talking about. And I said, but you know what? You'll remember more from this day and the hard cases than you will whenever you had a day so slick you thought you could, as my daddy said, you can stick your tongue out and lick your eyebrows. You're so you won't remember those days. You'll remember those bad days. And even though they're painful while they're happening, they're a blessing, because that's whenever you learn the most.
All right, Nicolas, you hear that?
Yes.
Are you taking in these wise words?
I'm taking in these wise words. I'm writing them down.
That's right. The next time you have a bad day, you'll just text me and go, well, Sharon, it didn't quite happen like that for me. But it's the truth. As long as you've got somebody who's nice to you whenever those things happen. I'll tell the students, listen, this is a controlled drowning. I'm not going to let you hurt anybody. I'm not going to let you die. But
I love that. A controlled drowning.
That's such a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it the truth? It's chaotic. It's painful. It's, all of those things. But I was just so fortunate to have such great preceptors. Most of them, a lot of them are no longer with us, but they were fantastic. And my anesthesia mom was a lady that took me under her wing whenever I first got out of anesthesia school and went to work at a small 90-bed rural hospital. And she started giving anesthesia the year I was born. And she taught me so much. If you could see on my wall here, and she died a couple of years ago, but I have a shadow box with all of her ether hooks, her ether mask, her, your AANA number tells where you graduated in the pecking order. So whenever you get your AANA number, it means something. And hers began with a 0.
Wow.
And she was president of North Carolina Association, 1971 to 72. I was president 2001 to 2002. And whenever I got on the national board, and I was going to the banquet, which we don't have anymore. It's like our big prom. She said, I used to be skinny like you, and I still have my dress when I was state president. So when I walked down the aisle as a new board member for the AANA, I wore her dress that her mother had made in the 1970s. We used to have a printed news bulletin that came out from the AANA, and so they wrote an article about it, about me wearing my mentor's dress, but I called her my anesthesia mom, and she was just lovely. Taught me so much about giving anesthesia. Now, listen, you talk about harsh lessons. I'll never forget. I told the circulator I had a patient I was waking up who had frequent bronchospasms on awakening, on emergence. And I said, go get Barbara. Barbara, tough lady. She ran the department. She was the chief in a CRNA only small rural hospital for years and years by herself. Cussed like a sailor. They all smoked everything. And she slammed the door to the OR open. And I was like, I just don't know what to do. And she said, did you put that GD tube in? I said, yes, ma'am, I sure did. She goes, well, sometimes you just got to have the balls to take it out. Here she extubated the patient. She come in one day. I had another patient that I said, y'all go get Barbara. I might need a little bit of help. And she come in, and you know how back then they used to teach it, because we didn't have Sugamidex, and hold your head up, squeeze my hand to make sure that all of their paralytic had been reversed. And she come in and she said, is that how you want to wake up? And she slapped me on the face as hard as she can. She goes, do you want to wake up like that? She said, I better not ever see you say, wake up, or because people used to do that, kind of smack their face, She said, you want to wake up like you do on Saturday morning. Now pull that GD tube out before they get good and awake. Yes, ma'am.
Say less. Say less. It's out.
Slap me in the face. Slap me in the face.
Oh God!
I just do that with gentle parenting and gentle all this kind of stuff. Lord have mercy, you get in trouble.
Oh God!
Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh! I think we could just have like a whole episode. I think on stories. That's what I feel like. This is wild. These are just such amazing pearls we're getting. I love it.
Oh my goodness.
Well, kind of moving on more to advocacy here. So within nursing anesthesia, you're known for leadership, but what a lot of people might not know is that you ran for North Carolina House of Representatives. I believe was it 2016?
Let me see. Yes. Yeah.
So
it was
2016.
Years
Well, I hear that kind of led to your DNP project at Yale. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It did. I had been a lobbyist. I had been around legislatively, done a lot of things. And then I decided to run. And unfortunately, I lost. I was the third CRNA in the country to run for a public office like that. Deb Barber from Kentucky had ran, and Lee Bias from West Virginia had ran for office. All of us wound up losing, unfortunately. But I figured out I didn't know as much as I thought I did, even though I had been around in the arena. So whenever I went to Yale, I and another colleague designed a curriculum, and we're going to have a campaign school just for nurses. But COVID happened, and we didn't get to fully complete our project. We still did a 2-hour webinar, skinny down, and started working on a documentary. And so that was my DNP project at Yale, long time ago. So I think I finished in 21. Yeah.
Do you think you would ever run for office again?
If I could find the right seat. Part of that is all in timing. Now, The other problem is because I have been such a public figure in North Carolina, what happened, it became a very expensive seat. The seat that I ran for had never cost over $8,000 to win. And I thought if I can raise $17,000, I can really put together a good campaign. I raised $67,000.
Ooh.
The anesthesiologist dropped $250,000 into dark money against me for that seat. So it wound up being one of the most expensive house races for a small town. It was just a small county. I was running for a House of Representatives seat, and it wound up being one of the most expensive seats in North Carolina for a small county like that. I don't know that I could ever win. It's got to be a really good seat, an uncontested seat, if I could get through that. But my picture used to be on the homepage of their website for a very, very long time. Luckily, it was a great picture of me when I was a lot younger. I wasn't entirely offended by that. So the answer could be yes, it could be no. It's all about timing.
Do you think nurses try to avoid politics at all? Because,
Absolutely.
like you said, you don't hear a lot of nurses running for office or getting involved.
No, they do. And right now I'm co-chairing a national, we were a commission, now we're a center called the Center for Nursing Value. And I don't know if you know who Rebecca Love is. She'll be doing the hackathon, she and I, this year. Rebecca is the only nurse who ever did a TED Talk that went viral. And she talks about nurses being innovative. But she called me. Well, maybe I did have some imposter syndrome at this particular time while we're thinking about it and thinking back. She had asked me to serve on this commission, and I had cold called her how I had met her because I wanted to have her on the podcast because I saw this TED Talk and she was amazing. And we got to be friends through the podcast. And she called me that she was going to do this commission and would I co-chair it with her. And I said, "Are you sure you want it to be me? I mean, this is mainstream nursing. Why would she call me?" And I said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to say yes because I want to have the opportunity to work with you. And if you find somebody more qualified, it won't hurt my feelings if you ask me to step down." Well, here we are several years later. She's working the absolute piss out of me. Excuse me. But I could not tell her no. But nurses don't even recognize the economics of how they get paid. So we've had to kind of reboot, go back, and we've started a fellowship within the center for nurses to understand their economic impact. Nurses have been rolled in with the room rate for 100 years. So they're basically invisible. And we're trying to, now with AI, you can identify what nurses do, how long it takes them, and there's a way to pull them out of the room rate. Because if you're a cost center, what do they tell you? No more money towards nursing, right? Because you're seen as a cost. Even the OR nurses are in the room rate. There's not a line item on any hospital bill that says nursing care.
I actually listened to your podcast. You talked about that, and I was so surprised. I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, see, most nurses don't. And we've got somebody on the commission, Renee Elmer. She was a nurse, one of the few nurses who has served in Congress. So I knew her, and I called her and said, "You need to be on this commission with me, now center." And she didn't even know. She served in Congress. She was a nurse. She had no idea. So I'm doing a lecture on it at Atlantis in Bahamas. Hey, I know you hate me for that, but at a meeting. So I've just updated that talk because even anesthesia people don't realize how nurses are billed for. But CRNAs were the first people to get third-party reimbursement. So that was another reason why she wanted to have a CRNA alongside her on this endeavor. But as I've been, one of my last slides on the talk has got an elephant being eaten, because let me tell you what, this may not happen in my lifetime, but how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So we're just chinking right on along.
Well, that is actually going to transition us now into rapid fire questions. Bow, bow,
I
bow,
feel like
bow.
we need Levi here. That wow, wow, wow,
I know. That's what he
wow.
does. He loves doing the soundboard effects. So I try to imitate you, Levi, if you're listening. Again, rapid fire, just kind of very first answer that hits you. Okay.
All
All
right.
right. First one, Mac or Miller?
Oh, I'm a Miller girl. Listen, when I was in school, they would make us intubate with a tongue blade and just the tube. I
Oh,
had an anesthesiologist from Pakistan, and he would make you use a Miller 3 on an infant. Whenever patients would come down from ICU, they would say, okay, you're not taking the head of the bed off to make it easier. You're going to lay on the bed and intubate. They would make us do all of this stuff because they're like, you may not have the perfect conditions all the time, which is absolutely true. You
That is
don't
very true.
Listen, I did not work in a hospital for 16 years because I was banned across the state. So I did office-based anesthesia, worked for a CRNA, and then I decided I was going to go back to a hospital, and I went back during COVID. My first patient, and I was with the chair, he come in the room to see about me, and I took one look, and I go, not happening. All right, here you go, guys. He said, do you want the glide scope? I said, I've never used one. Never. He goes, you want to today? I go, yeah, sure. They bring it in. I intubate the patient. He said, it looks like you've done it before. I said, well, the cords look the same for the last 35 years. I mean, I can see cords. That's no problem. But I had never used a glide scope until
Wow.
yeah, because we didn't have that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
Miller, I'm a Miller girl.
no.
Miller girl.
Well, next question: coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee.
All the way.
All the way. Yeah, man. I never drank coffee till I went into anesthesia school. You know, that's you live off of caffeine.
Correct. Well, next question. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Oh, early bird. Always have been.
Last one here. If you weren't a CRNA, what would you be?
Oh God. You know, I used to ask that question on our early podcast when we started in 2018. I would probably have been a lobbyist.
So still involved in advocacy work, no matter what it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. I would do that. And lobbyists make pretty good money if you've got several clients. So I could have still have kept up in the lifestyle I've become accustomed to.
All right. So, throughout your career, you've kind of worn a lot of hats. You're a lobbyist, advocate, educator, leader, podcaster. When people look back on Sharon Pearce years from now, what do you hope they remember most?
Oh, this is such an easy question. Our historical series that we have done through the podcast is what I want to be remembered by, the legacy that's going to be left. You know, we started podcasting in 2018, and I'll tell you why we started initially. Jeremy and I were friends, and I'll never forget, I was late to a meeting, which was unusual. And he was there, and he said, I've got an idea for something for us to do together. And it's blah, blah, blah. I can't even remember. It was so stupid. I said, I'm not doing that. That's stupid. I said, but I think we need to do something that is called a podcast. I said, this is how my kids consume information. And another friend of mine was standing right there who's very creative, who has since passed away too, making you scared to be friends with me right now. Everybody seems to be gone. But anyway, she was always so creative. And she was my grassroots chair whenever I ran for the state house. And we said, Deb, what should we call it? And she just come up with it, Beyond the Mask. And that's how we got our name. So we started podcasting after that, and we were at our state meeting, that fall. And interestingly enough, the bar was right. You walked right by the bar to get to the meeting hall. And there were two women sitting in there drinking wine. And I knew who they were, but I watched all these CRNAs and all these SRNAs file by, and they didn't even pay them any mind. And I thought, they think they're just two old ladies drinking in a bar. It was Sandy and Nancy Marie. And they didn't know what podcasting was. And the state had given us a room to take podcasts in. Now, we just had gotten just minimal equipment. So there was a microphone for me and Jeremy, and we had one other microphone. We were thinking, oh, we'll just interview one person at a time. So I talked to Sandy and Nancy, and they're like, we don't know what this is. We don't know if we want to do it. Well, they came in and we interviewed them. And it was interesting. The room they had gotten us at the state meeting had glass around it, just like we have been doing at the exhibit hall where we tape at annual Congress. But so people were standing outside watching us tape. Well, Sandy and Nancy got into a fight over the microphone. And they're pulling the microphone back and forth. I mean, Erin knows them, so she knows that is, you can visualize what this was like. And then Sandy would be talking and Nancy would raise her hand like this. Nancy was also an AANA past president. She raised her hand. I'm like, Nancy, you don't have to raise your hand. We'll let you have the microphone. Now they have taped about 50 episodes with us on the history of the association.
Oh, I love that.
And Sandy says we're all drinking from wells we did not dig. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. And history repeats itself. It's so funny. I've been around so long that things will happen. And I'm like, they tried to do that to us in 1994. But they think it's the first time. But you need to know your history to know where you're going. And the history of this organization is amazing. And that it was founded by women not even a decade after they got the right to vote. It's just amazing. I mean, we didn't even let men in this organization until I think it was the 50s. But thank God they're here. That whole historical series is something, and nobody's going to go to the archives. Nobody's going to sit and read a book anymore. I don't even read books anymore. I listen to everything audible, right? So now you can hear it. And Nancy and Sandy were in a lot of the rooms. Outside of the initial cases that legitimized our practice, it wasn't until the 80s that we really moved the needle when we got third-party reimbursement. All of those things have really changed the shape of our profession. These women were in the rooms, but it's interesting to hear all these stories. So the historical series, and then we've taped most of the past presidents that obviously are still alive and we called it the Courage to Lead series. What happened during your year? Things that you remember, those kinds of things. And I had the pleasure and the opportunity. I have taped a capsule episode with Sandy that only 3 people have heard. She wouldn't even let her husband hear it.
Wow.
And I and Walter, of course, our editor, but it will only be aired on her death. And she knows that's what it's for.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. It kind of is, even though I was scared to ask her if she wanted to do it. Now, if she gets a little drinking or something, she said, I never thought I'd be able to talk beyond the grave, but Sharon Pearce has afforded that opportunity.
Sharon Pearce makes miracles happen. That's
That's the takeaway from today.
That's it.
All right. Well, Sharon, thank you so much for taking time to join us today. We really appreciate you sharing not only your experiences as a CRNA and leader, but also the lessons you've learned along the way.
Yes. So thanks again, Sharon. And also to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope today's conversation inspires you to just keep learning, keep asking questions, and maybe even say yes to some opportunities along your journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with a fellow SRNA, and make sure to follow us on Instagram at Grade 1 View Podcast. Until next time.